to I Love This Thing So Fricking Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I am joined by Katie, a security officer who'd rather be spending time at a con, reading a book, or in general, doing anything nerdy. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Good to have you here. So, here's how this works. Katie will have 3 minutes to talk about something that she loves. This can be a person, place, thing, concept, activity, anything she wants. Our only requirement is that she loves it wholeheartedly and wants to tell us why. Are you ready, Katie?
I'm ready.
Good. Got my timer here. Now, what do you love so freaking much?
So, I love the video game Control. It's by a Finnish developer called Remedy. I found out about the game kind of late. It actually came out 2019, and I found out about it in March, just browsing listings on Humble Bundle. And so it's a third-person shooter, got a little bit of an action adventure type feel. What drew me in, because I'm not actually a shooter person, was the story. I grew up with like Buffy and the X-Files and Erie, Indiana, and Blake Halsey High, and all the shows about weird stuff happening to kids or adults and the unexplained. And Control basically is like, what if the SCP Foundation were actually real? Or I think the box quote might be, what if the Ghostbusters ran the FBI? I do actually own it both physically and on Steam at this point now, because I love it enough to buy it twice. But you are Jessie Faden, a young woman who has been desperately seeking the government agency that abducted her little brother when they were both children. And she arrives one day to find the place that she has been searching for. It is in complete lockdown. There's a strange janitor wandering around, and he is the only person that she encounters for a bit. And suddenly, after she talks to him, she finds herself in charge of the agency, or at least that's what everyone tells her. And you have to go around and figure out where your brother is. You have to explore the agency that you're in, and it does kind of shift and change around you. You get psychic abilities that you can use, so you can like launch stuff at your enemies, have kind of a telekinetic control over people. You can levitate, which is honestly my favorite thing, because when you gain that, you can just climb up to the highest point in some areas and just float downwards, and there's actually something really neat and freeing about that. It's pretty good for newbies, honestly, because they have difficulty adjusters that you can be as hardcore as you want, or you can be as casual as you want within the game. There's a lot of really unique little bits of world building. Most of it's not done outright. You have to kind of look for collectible items, letters, and briefings on strange occurrences and that kind of thing. It's just a very, very intriguing world,
Go
and you
ahead and
soon
finish your
find
thought.
out. Just basically, you soon find out that there's a lot more to our world and our dimension than anyone could have imagined.
That's awesome. Thank you for telling us about the video game Control today.
Yeah. I get to geek out about it. Why wouldn't I want to?
That's the whole idea of the show. Ooh, how about let's start with the game design, because you mentioned that the world shifts and changes around you. Can you talk a little bit more about what this game looks like?
The idea is that the government headquarters that you're exploring is a throwback to brutalist architecture. So it's all concrete and there's no windows anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find posters and stuff around too that tell you that house shifts don't mean overtime. And because the building has been corrupted, as you explore, you will find areas that are blocked off, and you have to rid the house of corruption for it to sort of unravel itself for you. The building is called the oldest house. They've not actually fully explained why that is. I'm kind of hoping that there might be a sequel one day to do that. but it will unfold itself around you. And as you gain abilities, you can go back and explore areas, and you'll find different things that have been tucked away that you didn't realize were there before because you couldn't levitate to them or
Ooh.
throw a chunk of wall away to find it. So it's neat. It's fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not just, when you gain a level, you go from one room to the next room to the next room. It's, oh no, now we got to go back to explore that previous room to do the next part of the game.
Exactly. That really is what it is. Now, the good thing is if you're worried that like, oh, I can't keep my head straight, there is a map function, and while some areas still change a little bit, once you've unlocked an area, you don't have to worry about it like crazy shifting back on you or anything.
So you mentioned the map. Before in your talk, you mentioned that there are difficulty adjusters. Is that map one of those adjusters? And could you talk a little more about how you can change the difficulty of the game?
So the map, I think, is actually just a standard feature. It kind of unlocks as you go and explore. I mean, it definitely helps. The one thing I dislike about it is that it will overlay the screen, so I will pull it up briefly and look at it and then tuck it away. But so when the game originally released, as I understand it, it did not have the features that work really well for me. But now the edition that comes out, I think by default just comes with it. I got the ultimate that has the DLC included. You can choose to essentially be a god in this world. You can one hit kill your enemies if you want. You can take 0 damage. For someone like me, where I don't do shooters at all, I still wanted the challenge. So for the most part, I didn't touch the default settings, but there were a couple of times where I was like, you know what? I have done this battle about 15 times. I am not improving. I'm going to just change my health and take about 50% less damage, and let's see how that works. And as my gameplay improved, I didn't need to do that as much, but it's nice to know that that's there because that makes the game more accessible, I think, to anyone and everyone. And it's definitely a story and a world that should be enjoyed by as many as possible.
Yeah, it sounds like, if you're someone who isn't very good at the shooty parts of games, but you still want to get to know the story and still want to find all that world building details you mentioned, maybe you don't want to die a million times. Maybe that doesn't sound like fun, but maybe playing God sounds a lot more fun to some people.
Oh yeah, I don't get me wrong. I've actually been tempted to toss it on and just go rampaging around the building a couple times because you can. The game has, of course, main missions, but once the main story wraps, you can still wander around and explore and play with your powers. So I might do that one day just for fun.
I mean, it's a game. It's supposed to be fun, right?
Right, and usually it's my stress relief. I can come home. I've actually sunk almost 100 hours into the game.
Nice.
I think probably 20 to 30 of it was the main story and the DLC, and then the rest has just been goofing off after work. Like, you know what? I'm frustrated. Let's go float off of the top of the maintenance sector. And if we meet enemies at the bottom, okay, there's a firefight. But, like I said, just running around and floating and throwing things around can be its own catharsis.
Since you can't do that kind of stuff in real life.
Exactly, exactly. But you can be a superhero in a video game, so who wouldn't want to?
No, indeed. Do you have a favorite bit of world building? You mentioned that a lot of the story is told in the things you find around. Any, maybe nothing too spoilery in case someone wants it to be a surprise, but something that's an extra fun little bit of world building.
I was gonna say actually the favorite part of the game for me and for most people is a spoiler,
Ooh.
but I will say it's got some kick butt music, and thanks to the game I actually have a new band that I've been paying attention to. Well, new to me. But I would say that my second favorite bit is so like any good corporate office, they have a mail department. And because they are invested in the weird and the strange, they collect dead letters, letters that have just died at the post office because it's addressed, just to the government. Okay, well, where?
Hmm.
And so there's a guy that, like, the first letter that I ran across in that department was a guy that talked about buying his wife one of those singing fish that you display on the wall. Only this one was doing demonic chanting in the middle of the night. And I read that and I was like, okay, I think I'm hooked. um And a third favorite is a rubber duck.
Okay.
Because yes, you have to capture a rubber duck.
When you say capture,
I mean
does
capture.
the rubber duck fight back?
He can evade you.
Okay.
He can evade you, and he quacks at you, which a rubber duck should not do, but he does.
He does. It's a duck. I guess that makes sense.
Yep, it is that kind of game and that kind of world where and that's the other fun thing is just the posters on the wall that are the mundane workplace safety posters, except they're not, because they're telling you, instead of this is theft, that's why you don't take it home, it's are you sure that's a real stapler?
It sounds like it's hit the cross section between creepy and funny.
Exactly, it did. And I think 90% of the game, I was more just looking at the enemy as like, here's this thing to be overcome, but I'm not scared of it. Like, sure, I understand why people are terrified of it in the game universe, but like, it's not overly scary. There's blood, but it's not like a Resident Evil game or something where those are too gory for me.
Mm-hmm.
These are more puddles on the floor, and I can live with a puddle on the floor, or bodies that aren't moving on the floor, because it's still not overly graphic compared to comparable games in my mind.
Is there anything that you don't like about Control? And if so, how do you handle that?
One particular villain that shows up in the AWE DLC and in the so AWE can actually mean a few different things. In the game's language, it means altered world event. However, it's not a spoiler to say that the game has hints and connections to one of Remedy's previous games, Alan Wake, and so some people call it the Alan Wake expansion.
Mm-hmm.
But there's your main villain in that terrified me because he fights in the dark.
Uh-oh.
I don't like the dark. I do not like games that throw me into the dark. Now, granted, you can still see, to move your character around, but I would have to take breaks. There's no shame in looking up game guides, and so I definitely looked up a couple of guides and was like, okay, something has to be going on that I am missing, or I'm overlooking something, and this guy scares the crap out of me, and I don't like fighting him in the dark. What am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. It was a period of breaks and guides, and then I did eventually actually defeat him, and that was really, really awesome. But anything in the game that frustrates me, I take a break for a bit and come back to it the next day or a couple days.
Which again, games are supposed to be fun. So if it's more fun to try to get past the creepy and the dark section and not get stuck in there, then by all means, let's do what's going to make it more fun.
Exactly. And that way, I'm not going, yeah, I like this guy, but I want to know what happens next.
Katie, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for letting me geek out about it.
My pleasure. And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about the video game Control or our guest Katie, you can find her social media information in the episode description. And don't forget to use the hashtag #LoveThisThingCast to tell us about the things you love. I Love This Thing So Fricking Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed and edited by Sophie A. Katz. You can find us at Through the Window on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Tumblr. That is THROU The Window at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.